Live from the WPAA studios in Wallingford, Connecticut, and streaming live worldwide on the web at WPAA.tv. This is the Open Mic TV show. I'm your host, Michael Cuomo. Welcome along on this Wednesday evening, November the 14th, 2012. And to my left, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce the guest that I promised would be on tonight, Mr. Craig Fishbein, the Wallingford Town Councilor. Craig, thank you for coming on.
Nice to see you again, Mike.
Appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, quickly want to apologize, although it's out of our control, for last week. We did not have a show due to the snowstorm or blizzard or whatever you want to call it. I mean, we went from a hurricane to a blizzard in a matter of 8 days.
Did you lose power?
No, didn't lose any power.
So did I.
That's great. We'll talk about Wallingford Electric maybe during the show.
Absolutely.
One more topic to add, but we're glad to be on tonight, and you know, obviously we have Craig on, so we are back live. We are ready to take your calls at 203-265-6310. Before you do call in, I want to throw out our poll question of the week, and it has to do with the election, which, again, a lot of this stuff, ladies and gentlemen, is a week old, but that's because we weren't on last week. Poll question of the week is, do you think we should switch to a popular vote system rather than an electoral vote when it comes to voting for president, and why? So do you think we should switch to a popular vote instead of an electoral vote for president, and why? Give us a call, 203-265-6310. We'll keep a running tally as to what you were voting, and then later on, Craig and I will give our feedback and our vote and tell you where we stand. Because we don't want to sway the vote either way. You know, that would be...
well, nobody listens to me anyway. So
well, likewise, but, you know, I don't want to be accused of voter fraud here. Okay, Craig, let's talk about the election. Obviously, that's been at the forefront of most news and you know, water cooler topics at the office. I guess we'll start with the national news regarding the president, and as we all know by now, in case you don't know, President Obama easily won a second term as president, defeating Mitt Romney. These are the numbers I have, and I could be off a little bit, but in Connecticut, I had Obama with 58% of the vote against 40% for Romney. On a national level, we had Obama 50%, Romney 48%, and then getting to our poll question, when it comes to popular vote, we had Obama with 2.6 million more votes than Romney when it came to the popular vote. It was about 59 million to 57. Just given these numbers, Craig, what's your first, what crosses your mind when you hear these numbers? I mean, were you surprised at the results? I mean, let's take away who you wanted to win. Were you surprised that Obama won in the fashion that he did?
I was surprised. I'm still surprised in that, you know, there were many pundits the days before, I think it was the weekend before that, was it Dick Morris came out and said it's going to be a landslide for Romney, and then Glenn Beck the election morning, the same thing, and Karl Rove, you know, the same thing, and you sort of, you know, get rolling with that, and you know, so I was surprised. I'm also surprised that I haven't talked to anybody who admits to voting for Obama this time, so they either don't exist or I'm hanging out with the right people, I guess.
Well, I know it's funny because we were talking earlier before the show, the first time Obama won in 2008, I couldn't find anyone that would admit they voted for him either. And I started to say, you know, random stranger, I'd say, well, listen, someone had to vote for him or else the guy wouldn't be in office. But I understand what you're saying.
The other interesting thing is the amount of votes that Mitt Romney got compared to what McCain got.
Yeah.
And it's about 2 million votes, 2 million people less voted for Romney than they did for McCain.
Yeah.
Who, in my opinion, McCain was one of the most lackluster candidates for any office that I've ever seen. And, you wonder, is that the Ron Paul backlash?
Yeah.
Did that make the difference? Did the way the Ron Paul delegates were treated at the convention, even before the convention, sort of being shut out of the process, did many people stay home? It looks like many people stayed home, but we don't really know why.
Two quick things, Craig, if I may. First thing, I was just adding up the electoral votes. The final number I have, and again, if anyone out there knows a different number, if I'm wrong, I apologize, call us. I had Obama at 332 electoral votes, which included the state of Florida. Prior to that, I had it at 303. Florida was, up until 4 or 5 days ago, still contested, and I don't think they had a recount, but once all the votes were gathered and tallied up, I think Obama had about a 70,000 vote lead, which gave him 29 electoral votes. And Romney had 206 total electoral votes. As we all know, you need 270 to win. I don't remember if McCain had more than 206.
I don't either.
Back in 2008 or not, but the other quick thing I want to mention, and I'll ask you, Craig, and if anybody out there, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, wants to chime in, it appears that the GOP is admitting a defeat not only in the presidential race, but also in the race when it comes to what I just said, race, and I mean that in the Latino race. It seems that the consensus is the Republicans did not persuade the Latino voters as well as Obama did. The numbers I think that I had was 75% of the Latino votes went to Obama and 25% to Romney. So there's been some speculation, there's been some finger pointing in the Republican Party that they did not go after, at least in an aggressive way, and try to appeal to the Latino voters. What's your take on that?
I don't know that was, in my opinion, I think it came down to immigration policy.
Right.
We have, on one side, we have Barack Obama, who ran on immigration reform the first time. In my opinion, has done nothing with immigration reform. And then we had Romney come through with one day it was, I'm strict adherence to the federal law, and then another day it's, I'm in favor of some amnesty programs. So I think those are the two things that are being balanced. And when you look at Latino population, that's one of the things that comes to mind is the immigration issue. And, not being a Latino person, but trying to put myself into that situation, if I was balancing those two things, and I'm looking at my neighbors, the people in my community, the people that I go to church with, who one party is saying, get out, even though you've been here for years and you've been a part of the community, and the other one is saying, I'm going to do something, but I haven't done something. Those are your choices. I could see why you would vote for stand still, do nothing. Right. Those are my comments.
What would you say, and this kind of ties into the poll question, and again, ladies and gentlemen, give us a call, 203-265-6310. The poll question, do you think we should switch from a electoral vote that we currently have in place to a popular vote, and why, when we vote for president? Craig, I spoke to a lot of people who are Republicans living in Connecticut who feel that their vote does not count when it comes to voting for president in Connecticut, because it's primarily a blue state. I don't know, what was George Bush Sr. the last time Connecticut voted Republican?
Yes, to my knowledge, yes.
1992?
I believe so, yes.
So 20 years. And then you can also look at other, dominant blue states, California, well, New Hampshire's somewhat of a toss-up on occasion, New York State. If you're a Republican living in California, New York, Connecticut, would it be safe to say that your vote does not count when you vote in a presidential race due to the numbers that overwhelmingly show a Democratic crowd, if you will?
You're comparing California and New York to Connecticut.
Correct. I'm saying
Okay.
whether you lived in California, Connecticut, or New York, would you assume, my vote's not going to matter, I'm voting for president because the Democrat's going to win?
I think to a certain effect in each of those states, there is a level of that, but I think of the states that you gave it as an example, the most is Connecticut. And actually, the proof is in the pudding in that the candidates don't come to Connecticut.
Right. Good point.
During the primary, we had a presidential primary on the Republican side. There was 3 candidates on the ballot. There was Ron Paul, Rick Santorum, and Mitt Romney. Gingrich might have still been around at that point also. I don't think any of them came to Connecticut.
Right.
On the night before the primary, Ann Romney came to Connecticut, and she went to Stamford to a dinner. All through the election, after that, Romney was the candidate, and up until Election Day, Mitt Romney never came to Connecticut. Obama did come, but that was more for congressional candidates.
Right.
And Paul Ryan came, but not to public events, to my knowledge. Came to a couple of dinners, one in Greenwich and one in maybe West Hartford.
Private fundraisers.
Private fundraisers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the candidates realize that.
Yeah.
They don't, the votes in Connecticut from the populace don't really count for a lot.
And a good point is also the commercials. We didn't see a ton of Mitt Romney commercials in Connecticut. At least I didn't.
I don't watch a lot of TV.
Yeah, well, I don't blame you. I mean, except for open mic. There's nothing
That's
else
true.
to really watch.
Well, I usually watch that online, though.
Oh, okay. I don't recall seeing a lot of, I could be wrong, I don't recall seeing a lot of Romney commercials in Connecticut. Maybe a couple Obama commercials, a ton of Chris Murphy commercials with Obama advocating and fighting for Chris Murphy.
And a ton of Linda McMahon commercials towards the end asking you to vote for Obama.
Correct. You could vote for Obama and for Linda McMahon. That was the point there, which we'll get to Linda in a second, but
Well, you brought up Murphy.
yes, that's right. But I don't know in California or New York, whether there were a lot of Romney commercials. I mean, from a financial, standpoint, I think they would allocate their money more to the battleground states.
Would make sense.
And speaking of battleground states, this is probably the most shocking information that I got from the election. Obama won the key states here. Now, just hear me out. Ohio, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Wisconsin, which is Paul Ryan's home state, Minnesota, Virginia, and Florida. That was a home run. If he had North Carolina on there, he would have batted 1,000. And a lot of these states, the Romney camp thought they were going to get. And going into election night, if Ohio was won by either candidate, they pretty much felt they won the whole election. North Carolina and Virginia, they were important, but I think Ohio, for some reason, always seems to be that key state. And I watched all the, Fox, CNN, and all the poll analysts, and they always go back to Ohio. Something about it.
Isn't there some statistic out there that no presidential candidate has ever won without Ohio?
No Republican candidate has won presidency without winning the state of Ohio.
Okay, so that's,
I don't know how many electoral votes come out of Ohio. It might be 20-something, but...
And based upon what we saw happen, even if Romney had won Ohio, he still would have lost.
Yeah, he John McCain had more votes than him. I mean, I think more electoral votes and popular votes. And it's just amazing because a lot of these states, I mean, Wisconsin is Paul Ryan's home state. Obama won. Pennsylvania is another key battleground state, neighbors to Ohio, and Obama won. Colorado was another. I mean, you could just go on and on. These are all states that Romney was hoping for. And as we saw the night progress and the numbers come in, you could just feel the deflation out of the Romney camp.
Yeah, I was pretty optimistic until the Wallingford Republicans got together with North Haven and East Haven, and we were at Fantasia in North Haven. And, I walked in with my wife, and they were putting numbers up on the board, and it was quite apparent. And I think we stayed there no more than 2 minutes, and I leaned over to someone and I said, "We see the writing on the wall, we're going home."
Right.
It was...
You literally saw the writing on the wall.
Literally, yeah, you're correct.
Well, let's move on. I don't want to take up the whole time about the presidential race. Let's quickly touch up on the Murphy-McMahon, and then we'll talk about the local races. Chris Murphy, in case you didn't hear, defeated Linda McMahon, and this was another shock. I mean, it almost seemed like by 9 o'clock, Linda McMahon had already conceded once the numbers came in, and Murphy won 55% to 43%. Pretty much at that point, a couple hours went by, McMahon gave her speech, and in reading some articles, it seemed, post-election articles from her, and obviously, things can change, but it seems like she's going to be reluctant to run again in 2 years. Is it 2 years for Senate or 4 years?
It would be 4 years.
4 years from now.
Because it's a 6-year term.
Okay.
And I guess, my only reaction to that, my only response, that was election night. But I certainly think that what happened in her campaign, especially at the end, with the, go vote for Obama and me, I think that angered a lot of people. I was really surprised at people on the, Republicans, people who are dyed in the wool Republicans, were quite mad about that whole situation.
To have that connotation of her and Obama in the same...
Not even connotation. There was direction. And it got...
Both for him and for me.
Yeah, it got even more overt towards the end. Not so much here, but Hartford, there was actually door knockers. There was actually signs, vote for Obama and me. And, understand that in Connecticut, for her to win, a significant amount of people would have had to split their ticket. I understand that.
Right.
I don't know what their internal polling was showing going into Election Day, but it seemed like things were going well until about 2 weeks before the election. Yeah. And left a really bad taste in people's mouth.
And in her wallet. She, what was it, between both races that she ran, it was over $100 million.
Yeah, I don't fault that or...
Well, she has the money, obviously.
She has the money, and, if she used other people's money, I'd rather have her spend her money than my money.
Correct.
And that's the problem with so many campaigns, with public financing of campaigns, where they're using our money to have those kinds of campaigns. She wants to spend her money to promote herself and to try and get votes, so be it. That's
by all means, right?
That's democracy, that's capitalism.
And finishing up the race results in the 85th district, as you saw, he was on here a couple weeks ago, Greg Bachand, the Republican challenger against the incumbent Mary Mashinsky. Mary Mashinsky did defeat Greg Bachand, almost a 2-to-1 margin. It was about 5,600 to 3,100 votes in favor of Mashinsky. Any surprise there? I personally thought that since Greg was on my show, he would easily win the election, but I guess I was wrong, you know?
Yeah, I think Greg ran a good campaign. I think Greg was centered on issues.
Right.
And you would hope that candidates get elected based upon issues.
Right.
So I was surprised. It's of no, I was at the polls from 10 o'clock until just about 8 o'clock for Greg. I don't know if you drove by, but I was out at Moses Y. I had a jacket on, and I had 2 Bashan signs, and I had headphones, and I was dancing like all day out at the street, getting people's attention.
Oh, really? Yeah. You might have been getting other votes then if you were dancing. Let's get to our first caller of the night. Good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic Show with special guest Craig Fishmine.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll break it down for you.
All right.
Basically, I heard Paul Ryan talk about Obama played well with the urban inner city. It wasn't just that. It was white suburbs in Ohio. See, Mr. Romney should have kept his mouth shut about the auto industry. He should have kept his mouth shut about the 47%. As far as Linda McMahon with Obama, vote for me, what about Chris Christie? People forgot about him. You see, the Republican Party right now has to take a look and say, you know what? How do we get young people in? Not just Latinos. There are no young representatives. You want to talk about money Linda McMahon spent? Carl Will was in the doghouse. How much money cost those millionaires? $trillions of dollars. Am I correct, gentlemen?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The Chris Christie thing, I had.
What about Carl Rove? He put some money out, too. He got those people putting money up.
Oh, yeah. But the Chris Christie thing.
Thank you for the call. Thank you.
It was interesting. I don't fault Chris Christie for doing what he did, in that he gave credit where he believed it was due. If he had said, this is the president and he's just doing it because he wants to get reelected, or, finding fault with what Obama was doing, then people would say, well, he's just being political. We have to stop this, just because I'm an R and I'm a D, that we're just going to butt heads all of the time. You try and work together. So that was an interesting facet right at the end. Chris Matthews actually, I don't know if you saw this, was it the day after the election, said basically, thank God for the hurricane.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah, he came under a lot of heat.
Yeah, and I think maybe things would have been different. But
well, the caller made a couple of good points there regarding Romney. Quickly, we'll touch up on him. The lack of support, if you will, for the auto industry, that could have hurt him, especially in Ohio. And the 47% comment, that certainly didn't help matters.
No, the 47% comment certainly didn't help. But, there's so many hypocritical things that go on with our media today. The double standard is just amazing. If, people on the other side of the aisle say things and it gets swept under the rug, is what I see. And, the 47% thing is inappropriate, not placed, shouldn't have been said, but blown out of proportion.
Yeah. And I mentioned a few weeks ago regarding media and the bias that's in the media. You turn to Fox News, you're going to get a Republican side. You're going to go to MSNBC with Chris Matthews, and you're going to get an anti-Republican view. It's just, I wish we can come back to the day where you can watch any certain news station and get an unbiased approach or report and not have to choose sides.
Well, that's why you have to filter it. When you read the newspaper, you filter out what is bias. At least I try to. But, part of this whole thing that has come into the campaign, the Romney campaign, is the perception. People are out of work. The economy stinks. And while Obama has not done anything to help that situation, I can see where it's difficult for one to perceive who's out of work how a multi-millionaire can identify with the man on the street who is unemployed. It's a disconnect, and while, you believe what Mitt Romney had to say, and, I think he's a good man, it's very difficult to try and get that connect, and I think that was a component also.
Sure. Yeah. People might say, well, what does he know about struggling Americans, and
Absolutely.
quickly, Craig, to round up the results, Len Fasano won his reelection in the 34th district, and he went against Steve Fontana. Sorry. I'll get it right eventually. I don't have the numbers there. I think it was about a 2-to-1 margin, if I remember correctly.
Generally, yes. And Lenny's a good guy, and
Yeah,
he's always there, and, yeah.
I actually sent Lenny a text that night to congratulate him post-election as soon as I saw the results, and he was very appreciative. So congrats to Len Fasano, who was on my show. Now, he was on my show and won his reelection. Unfortunately, Greg Bichon, we'll have to get him on again, I guess.
Yeah, well, Lenny was the only area Republican that won.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, majority of the other ones were Democrat.
Yep.
Let's get to our next caller. Good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic Show with special guest Craig Fishbein.
One question if you could ask. What's your take on the people that want to leave this country, the states that want to succeed? I'll hang up and listen to your answer.
Okay.
Well, I've been supporting that for a while.
Okay.
I think it comes out of frustration. But once, we are a nation of states. We are the United States. Mm-hmm. And the mature reaction to a vote of the people, if it was a vote of the people,
Right.
is not to take your bat and ball and go home. That's just not the way to deal with things. Am I disappointed what's going on in this country and this state? Absolutely. I don't think that the answer is secession. I think you get involved in the system, you stand up for what you believe in, and you attempt to change the system.
Fair enough.
What do you think about that?
I don't know. I mean, I always try to stay right down the middle here, I want viewers to tune in again next week, so I kind of I bite my tongue and I just have guys like you talk about it.
That's like the Buffalo Bills. You just punted.
Yeah, we got the best punter in the league. We'll get to sports in a few minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, again, and I apologize, I should have asked the caller his response or answer to the poll question, do you think we should switch over to a popular vote rather than the current electoral vote, and why? Give us a call, 203-265-6310. Quickly want to mention, if you're on Facebook.com, you can go to Facebook.com/OpenMic and YouTube, which we're going to have a copy of tonight's show played up on YouTube by the weekend. It's youtube.com/OpenMic80. And with that, let's get to our next caller. Good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic Show with special guest Craig Fishbein.
Yes, I would say the popular vote, along with proportional representation.
So you're in favor of switching to a popular vote?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for calling back. All right. We got one for the popular vote. You know what? Should we give our take on the poll question now before we switch over to sports?
Sure.
Let me ask you, Craig, and then I'll give you my take. Do you think we should switch over from the current electoral vote, which some people claim is very outdated, to a more contemporary popular vote?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I am going to also agree. So we have 3 votes for yes to switch over and none for keeping it as is. Now, why would you want to switch over?
I think it's more indicative of, well, it attributes the power of each of the votes to the individual. Ultimately, our government is a reverse pyramid. It is the federal, state, and local coming down to the individual. And in Connecticut, my vote really doesn't count for much because of the amount of electoral votes that we get.
Right.
So I think it would give me the same, I should have the same power as somebody who's voting in California.
Right. And I agree, in switching over to a popular vote, just because I think it would really make your vote or our votes mean something. I mean, if you're voting Republican or Democrat, regardless of what state you're in, you don't have to worry that the majority is already going to rule and your vote's not going to matter.
However, I think the thing you have to be careful of
Yep.
is changing the rules because you don't like the game.
Well,
I mean, this discussion has just come up now, in effect.
yeah,
Where was this discussion 4 years ago? It only came up because certain people thought that perhaps they would lose the popular vote but win the Electoral College and vice versa.
which has happened.
It has happened, yes.
Last one was in 2000 with George Bush.
Yeah.
I agree, but I think it's been something that people have been talking about for years. But it just nothing gets done about it. We just forget about it a few weeks after Election Day, and we just go back to our normal routine, and then it gets brought up again in 4 years. But I would be in favor of changing it, in terms of trying to even out the playing field and just modernize it. I think it's just a little outdated.
I would agree.
Yeah. And I don't know how many electoral votes Connecticut has. Is it 4, 8?
I think it's 8.
8. So we're not huge on the electoral map as to what we give or what you gain out of Connecticut, but, in a popular vote capacity, we could be a lot more, kind of level out the playing field,
Yeah.
All right, so if anybody out there wants to chime in on the poll question regarding the popular vote versus electoral vote, give us a call, 203-265-6310. We'll be here till 9 o'clock, taking your questions, calls, comments. Again, I am joined by Mr. Craig Fishbein here this evening. Craig, if you want, we can mix things up now and talk some sports.
Sure.
I mean,
It's your show,
those are the two main things people want to talk about, politics and sports, right?
I guess.
All right. Oh, actually, yeah, let's quick, we'll talk about sports, and then I want to get to a couple local
Sure.
things that are very interesting. So it won't be just sports, but let's do this. I want to start with my weekly NFL pick. Now, last week, because we weren't on, I had a pick that obviously I wasn't able to give, but I have confirmation of my pick, and what happened was I took the Indianapolis Colts last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they were a 4-point favorite. They blew them out. Now, if everybody out there will allow me to keep that pick, my record is now going to be 7-3. If you need confirmation as to the pick and that I had it, I can make a phone call on the air
I'll believe you.
to a witness. Okay. So with that being said, we're going to go on the assumption that I have a 7-3 record, which isn't too bad.
Nope.
I wish my Bills had a 7-3
I was
record.
just gonna say that.
3-6, but so let's get to this week's pick, hoping to go to 8-3. This one was a no-brainer. Looking at the schedule, looking at this team coming off a bye week, absolute no-brainer. The Green Bay Packers minus 3 points against the Detroit Lions. That is my pick for this week. Mark it down so you'll see that I did make the pick. Next week I'll be here to brag about it, and I'll be up to 8-3 on the year. All right. Speaking of NFL, we had only one unbeaten team going into this past weekend, the Atlanta Falcons. They were 8-0. Now they are 8-1, losing to the New Orleans Saints, which I don't know if you've been following the Saints. They've been They started off really slow, and they're coming up the ladder
Yeah,
quickly.
they were horrible. It was the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, they were 0-3, 0-4.
Yeah, and Breeze could not throw the ball to his own receiver.
Right.
He's throwing it to
Yeah.
the defense.
He must have had one of those LASIK eye surgeries this last couple weeks because he's on fire.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on the Saints. They might be marching in, no pun intended.
Well, preseason, I had looked at some fantasy football sources, and one of the ones that I rely upon said that Atlanta had the easiest schedule out of all the teams. And so I'm not surprised that they had gone 8-0.
Yeah.
Based upon that.
They started out hot, right?
Yeah.
Quick thing before I forget, baseball. I actually was this past Monday, as you know, in attendance at the Jerry Springer show in Stamford with producer Pat.
You weren't on the stage, though.
No, I wasn't. That's in a upcoming episode. But we were we were in attendance. It was the typical Jerry Springer stuff for an hour. If you don't think people died and come back to life, just go to a Jerry Springer episode. And after we left, producer Pat and I went to Bobby Valentine's restaurant right around the corner. And as we're walking in, producer Pat taps me on the shoulder and said, "There he is." And I said, "Who?" And I look around, and there's Bobby Valentine getting out of his little Subaru. He's driving a Subaru. And we started talking to him in the parking lot and got some photos with him, and real nice guy.
Subaru was his parting gift from Boston.
Yeah, they gave him a Subaru and a pink slip. I actually asked him, knowing that he would have said no anyway, if he wanted to come on the open mic show, which he's heard about. He did say he heard about it. But he said he would not be a good candidate to come on here because he doesn't really do well in interview settings.
Well, after this past year in Boston, I'm trying to figure out what Bobby Valentine does do well.
Well, I'll mention he's got pretty good food, so we'll leave it at that.
Well, he's not the chef, though.
Well, no, but I can tell him. I was telling producer Pat as we were at the bar, he runs a tight ship. He wants everything nice and neat, and he wants to make sure everyone's taken care of. And maybe managing baseball is not in his cards anymore. But he was quite the athlete back in the day, from what I gathered. And not a real big guy. I mean,
no, it would shortstop. I
don't know what he was, but I think he was a dual sport player. Was he an outfielder?
Okay.
So anyway, it was good to see Bobby V. And speaking of Red Sox and baseball, I think this was confirmed as of last week. Big Papi
is back.
Signed a 2-year deal with the Red Sox. He's 37 years old. Signed a 2-year, $26 million deal. Tax him. Okay. Well, he'll get taxed, all right. And Mariano Rivera, for all you Yankee fans, will be returning next year for his 19th season, ending any speculation that his career was over.
He is amazing, though. I mean, I'm a Red Sox fan.
Yeah, he is.
Just amazing.
I don't think we'll ever see another Mariano Rivera.
No.
It's amazing what he's done. And the freak accident he had, just, when he got hurt this year, he was out, I think, before the game, throwing balls or chasing down a ball.
Yeah, it was a pop-up or something like that.
Yeah,
chasing fungos, I think.
It wasn't like he was hurt in the middle of a World Series game where he dove for a ball. It was just a fluke accident, but...
He's so clutch.
Oh, yeah.
The beginning part of the season, everybody says, is he over?
Yeah.
And then like halfway through, just totally unhittable.
I forgot how old he is. He's got to be 40, 41, maybe 42.
Yeah.
And then finally, just to wrap up some sports news, there was a mega trade done yesterday in baseball, the Marlins and the Blue Jays. The reason I bring it up now, there's a lot of Red Sox, Yankee fans watching in this area, so this is going to really affect you guys and we Red Sox fans because the Blue Jays have now significantly added depth to their roster. They acquired pitcher Josh Johnson, shortstop Jose Reyes, who used to be on the Mets.
Burley.
Mark Burley, who's another pitcher, pitched a no-hitter once or a career, or whatever.
Twice.
Twice.
I think twice.
So the Blue Jays really added some depth. So Let's get to our next caller. Good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic Show with special guest Craig Fishbein.
Bobby Valentine was a tremendous athlete in high school, and I am Bobby Valentine's age, and he was an all-state football player as an outstanding athlete in track as well.
Hey, Ed, how are you?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Ed. How are you?
Very well, very well. So I don't want to talk about the Jets because I was having a good night until you talked about football.
Well, I wasn't going to talk about the Jets either. There's nothing to talk about.
Yes, I know it. I wanted to talk about briefly I had a friend of mine that had trained all summer long to run the New York City Marathon, and he was running it for Team Tillman, the Pat Tillman Project. Heath Pramberger out of Glastonbury. He's a good friend of mine. And even before Mayor Bloomberg came to his senses and decided to cancel the marathon, my friend Heath dropped out. He says it's not fair for him to run the marathon after all that was going on in the city. And I heard reports about, people that were coming in to work on the power lines were actually being not given hotel rooms because the runners needed hotel rooms.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that they decided to cancel the marathon. I'm a big fan of the New York City Marathon, and to even attempt to have it after what happened to that city, I'm glad that they canceled it. And my friend Heath and all the other runners that were scheduled to run this year will be able to run next year without having to pay the entrance fee.
Well, and also I think it was Philadelphia has a marathon coming up that they opened up like 100 spots.
Right.
For people to from the New York City Marathon.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Yeah.
I know the Philadelphia Marathon. I think it was a couple weeks, or is scheduled for a couple weeks after the.
Yeah.
New
So
York
I
City
was
Marathon.
very happy. I have a cousin who actually has been training, and on Facebook she's been raising money for I forgot what her charity is, and she was very disappointed that ultimately she couldn't run. She understood, but all summer long she was training, and
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a quick decision. It is a commitment. It is a 3 or 4 month commitment to get in shape for something like the Boston Marathon or the New York City Marathon, and to have it pulled out from under you. But I'm glad, and I don't know why Bloomberg took so long. I'm not a real big fan of Mike Francesa, but he was talking all about canceling the marathon, and his talking about the storm and the storm damage as well as the sports. I got to give kudos to Mike and WFAN. They did a good job, I thought.
Well, I think Bloomberg was busy auditing restaurants and the size of their sodas to make a decision on the safety of the people of New York.
Yeah. So.
Ed, before you go, did you want to chime in on the poll question?
I'll go with the popular vote.
Popular vote?
Yeah.
That seems to be
maybe it'll get more candidates to Connecticut. So.
That seems to be the popular vote tonight.
By the way, I should mention that I wrote in my presidential candidates, Judith Scheinlin and Enoch Thompson. So, and you probably know, I know Craig said he doesn't watch TV, but I'm sure he knows Judge Judy and Nucky Thompson from probably what has become, next to Open Mic, the best show on television, HBO's Boardwalk Empire.
Oh.
It is a tremendous program. It's worth, if you don't have HBO, get it, because Boardwalk Empire is a tremendous program.
Ed, did you inquire as to did you actually vote for those individuals?
No.
Okay. Well, because I did inquire with regard to the presidential primary, about write-in votes. And
really? Oh, okay.
And evidently, you had to be registered as a write-in candidate. So, in order for the vote for you to count. So, I guess, for all those people that used to vote for Mickey Mouse years ago, I guess they came away with a way to not have to count those votes anymore.
Oh, no, I did not realize that.
Yeah,
I really didn't. Okay.
You need 7,500 petition signatures to become a registered write-in candidate for president.
Wow.
Well, I'll tell you, if tomorrow night, if your man has a good night, I'm going to write in Ryan Fitzpatrick. Go ahead and squish the fish tomorrow night, Michael.
I'm hoping, but you know what? I'm realistic, Ed. We're going to be 3-7 tomorrow night.
Oh, good. He'll have a worse record than the Jets.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
All right, gentlemen. Have a good night. Good
You
show.
too, Ed.
thanks,
Thank
Ed.
you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Speaking of the Jets, I didn't want to mention it to Ed, but there's Daily News today, rumors or reports of some Jet players bashing Tebow behind his back,
Oh, really?
saying that he's not good enough to even be a backup quarterback. They don't want him. You know, they were just ripping him apart. And
They got to be jealous.
Well, they are basically putting their trust in Mark Sanchez, who Rex Ryan says has the best chance of winning, although he's not showing that.
No.
So people are now saying at this point, why don't we just let Tebow go in and see what he's got?
Yeah, I mean, I've had the unfortunate opportunity to catch part of the Jets this year, and I've
Was it
said,
a cure for insomnia?
yeah, I don't know how I got there, but you know, I'm surprised that Tebow hasn't come in, and I think we discussed this before. Where we thought once he came in, he wouldn't come out.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like a waste of money and time to bring him in if you're not going to use him.
Yeah.
Let's get to our next caller, and then we're going to get to some local issues here. Good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic Show.
Yeah, Mike, I just wanted to say that the guys that are criticizing Tebow are on the Jets' defense, the same defense that Tebow beat last year. So there might
That's
be
a
a
good
little
point.
bit of residual, kind of upsetness and their feathers ruffled and whatnot.
Isn't that immature?
It's a good point, but at the same time, it shows, and everyone calls the Jets a circus, and it shows the circus going on there. You know, I heard today on the Fan, there's a report, possibly Michael Vick's going to be a New York Jet next year. I mean, that's just going to really, you know, put the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, except for, maybe there's some dog lovers out there on the defensive line that could take care of that poor sorry so-and-so.
Yeah, right.
I wanted to mention that Rex Ryan is also rumored, not rumored, but they took a vote, and he's the most overrated coach in the NFL. You saw that one probably.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also wanted to chime in and say that last caller, Judge Judy, that is unwatchable, that show.
Really? You don't like
You're
Judge
a more
Judy?
arrogant person, overpaid, and, she makes $55 or $75 million
$45 million a year.
for that
Oh.
garbage.
Yeah. Well,
Imagine that.
I know Ed's a big fan of Judge Judy. I mean, I was actually watching her tonight. I don't agree when she actually bashes the defendant or plaintiff. She'll actually just say, you're scum, you're this,
Yeah.
you're that. I think she pushes it a little too far.
I think a suggestion that I would make would be that guy who was a fan of Judge Judy, that he watched some old Mr. Rogers shows.
Well, all right, we can.
Rogers Neighborhood, Fred Rogers.
Yeah.
He was actually a special forces guy, and a minister and a vegetarian. So you can't go wrong with that combination.
Right. Well, before we let you go, do you want to chime in on the poll question?
And that's to do with the popular vote versus electoral college.
Yeah, would you switch over to the popular vote or keep it at the
I got
electoral?
to tell you the truth. You got a politician to your left, to my right, and I got to tell you the truth. I know there's good arguments on both sides. Why? For instance, I've heard recently, I don't know the details, but somebody said, they got to keep the electoral college because of such and such. But common sense tells me that the popular vote is good, and it would make my vote in Connecticut sort of count for something other than, God forbid I vote for Obama, and, Connecticut's going to go Democratic no matter what. So
Right. So you're going to you want to go to popular.
I got to go popular.
All right. It's the
And you know
majority.
something? I think this mayor, Dickinson, is doing a hell of a job, and I don't know who would ever replace him with. And I'm a guy that we moved here about 12 years ago. Who do you replace that guy with?
I was having that same conversation with some of the managers of departments in the town. I was in town hall the other day, and I saw them getting together for lunch, and I just happened to sit down with them, and that was what I brought up. That became a topic of conversation, because we've talked about a town manager as opposed to a mayor, and I don't know what's going to happen when.
What are you going to do with a guy who gives himself a pay cut or doesn't take the money that he could take or whatever it is? And I'm a Democrat, so go figure.
Yeah, I mean, some people say that that's a double-edged sword also, that keeping the salary artificially low keeps competitors out of the race. So on one hand, it is something to herald. On another hand, it could be strategic. I have no opinion, but, people talk about both sides of that.
Right.
In closing, there's one guy that I think in the town that could do it, and I think his name is John, but the last name is Sullivan. He was a former TV host on this very network.
Yeah.
And I sometimes watch him on television for those, is he town council? Is that his deal? He's a town councilor, right?
Yeah.
Well, I watch those replays of that sometimes, and he's got some theatrical stuff going on, man. And I tell you what, he could maybe fulfill those shoes. So I just want to throw that out.
All right. Well, thank you for the call.
Go Jets.
All right, go Jets. Wow, that was a great call. Majority so far is switch over to the popular vote.
Not only the majority, it looks to be unanimous.
Unanimous, yeah. We have just about 10 minutes, Craig. I want to quickly get to a story here that hasn't even made the papers yet, that you brought up to me, that I think we can talk about. I'll just quickly start it, I'll let you finish it, and then we'll wrap things up. This has to do with the athletic field project that took place in 2005 at Sheehan High School.
Well, the money, to my knowledge, the money was appropriated. The project was approved in 2005.
Okay.
With a grant from the state.
Okay, and now, 7 years later, 2012, this money has suddenly reappeared.
Well, a portion of the money was used to redo the track and the football field at Sheehan.
Okay.
And the other portion of the money was appropriated with the intent to redo the baseball fields at Sheehan. And that's about $525,000. And evidently, this project has been kicked down the road, and the money's still sitting there. And I guess this was never brought to anyone's attention. And last night, I believe it was decided that they're going to take the money from that appropriation for Sheehan, and they're going to put it into Lyman Hall and redo some things at Lyman Hall. And that project is like $2 million, and it's still got like a $300,000 shortfall. So the situation is the baseball fields at Sheehan won't be finished. There's another project at Lyman Hall that's going to be done. My concern is that nobody's watching the money. You know, if we have a town, our little town, that's sitting on this money, there's 168 other towns in this state. What other money is being sat on that is not being used for whatever reason? I mean, this was appropriated in 2005, 7 years ago.
So the Board of Ed is ultimately responsible for this?
This is my understanding. Under state statute, the town council can't dictate individual expenditures to the Board of Ed. We, in effect, deal with a main appropriation, and they determine how the money is going to be spent. But this is a little bit different from the school roof project, where the school roof project, we created a committee, the school roof renovation committee, and each of the councilors got an appointee to that body, and they come to us periodically and they say, this is where we are, this is where the budget is, that kind of stuff. Nothing was done with this 2005 project, and there is no oversight from what I've seen.
I forgot the gentleman's name,
Sal Menzo?
Yeah, would he be the person that's somewhat,
Well, Sal wasn't the super then,
okay,
but, I'm sure, knowing Sal's up on this issue.
Yeah.
So yes, he would be someone to talk to about that.
this was brought up at the,
Operations Committee meeting of the Board of Ed last night.
okay. Was there a town council meeting last night?
There was.
There was, okay. I wasn't there, sorry.
But you watched it on TV.
Yeah, I always watch the replays, but I'll be at the next one, which will be in 2 weeks.
Yes, the
Okay.
26th, I think.
Can you believe 8 days from tonight or from today's Thanksgiving?
I know.
That's amazing.
As long as it doesn't snow.
Well,
Just have a nor'easter like all next week or something like that.
really?
Yeah.
Well, I hope not. I mean, I was going to say I apologize again for last week for not being on. We will be on, or I'll be on next Wednesday night, which is one of the busiest nights. People go out to bars and restaurants the night before Thanksgiving. It's an annual tradition. Everyone goes out and gets...
Maybe at your house.
No, I mean, I went out last year with producer Pat after here, and I couldn't find... It was standing room only, and no matter what establishment you went to.
Really?
Yeah, the night before Thanksgiving is a notorious, right, producer Pat, is a notorious, just like a party night. People, because no one works the next day. Everyone goes out, gets trashed, goes home, sleeps till noon, and then wakes up and has deep fried turkey and whatever else they have. Watch football and go to sleep. You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah.
I'm not one of these go out kind of guys.
Well, I'm not either, and I don't think we're going to go out next Wednesday night, but unless it's like at McDonald's, I don't think anyone will be there. I don't want to bring up, there's a couple other stories here, Craig, that we probably could talk about, but we only have a couple minutes. One of them is, actually, it was on your Facebook page, and I also read about it today, EBT cards in Connecticut, people getting EBT cards that were withdrawing money out of their cards at strip clubs, casinos, cigar shops, bars, and the person in charge of the Connecticut department that distributes this was saying, well, there's no link showing that they took the money out of a strip club and actually used the money at the strip club, but it's up for debate. We're going to sneak in a quick call and finish up the show. Good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic Show.
Hey, Mike, what's going on? It's John calling in.
Hey, Johnny, how are you?
Good.
Any questions for Craig and I, or do you?
Oh, no, I just want to let you know that tomorrow night I'll be rooting for the Buffalo Bills also.
Oh, great.
Because that way, when they win, my New England Patriots will stay further in first place.
Oh, boy.
The Patriots.
Yeah, I can't either. Now, Johnny, do you want to chime in on the poll question regarding the electoral vote versus popular vote? Which one should we have?
Yes. Well, I'm another person who has to say popular vote.
It's unanimous. Everyone agrees. Okay.
Every one individual stands for one vote. I don't think it matters where you come from. One is one.
All right. Well, it's unanimous tonight. Everyone's going with the popular vote.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks a lot.
All right, Johnny. Thank you for calling. Now, are you able to hear us better tonight, Johnny?
Yes.
Are you able to hear me better tonight? We fixed the phones.
Maybe.
Okay. I'll take that as a maybe.
All right.
Thanks for the call.
All right. Bye, guys.
It wasn't a trick question, John. I mean, it was.
He was still wondering about...
Yeah, I think he had the TV. He was listening to the 7-second delay. It, causes a little bit of confusion, but...
Well, I think it had something to do with the running back for the Patriots. Was it Bolden?
Bolden, yeah.
Being caught with substance. Yeah.
4-game ban, right.
Yeah.
We have just about 2 minutes left, so we're going to have to shut off the phone lines. But I want to say that I appreciate you coming on again. We'll have to have you on again. This might be the third time you've been on.
I think it is.
So who's counting? But no, I'd love to have you on again. We had some other things here we didn't get a chance to talk about. As you know, the hour goes by quickly.
The Rangers are undefeated.
Yeah, the Rangers, everyone in the NHL is undefeated. But thank you very much, Craig.
Nice to see you again.
Appreciate
Mike.
it. Yeah. Good to see you. I want to thank our technical director, Mike, in the back control room for another trouble-free evening. Thank you to producer Pat for doing whatever you do each and every week. I don't know what he does, but...
he laughs at your jokes.
Oh, okay. That's why I keep him around.
It's sort of like the Ed McMahon.
Yeah, right. I want to thank all the TV viewers and callers out there tonight. We couldn't do this without you. And until next Wednesday night, ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Michael Cuomo. Good night.